Hey guys, welcome back, it's Ripe again. In today's neighbor story, I found my home demolished after I returned from vacation. My neighbor was responsible for this. Here is what happened. The first one is titled, Absolute Psycho Neighbor. So, a new neighbor just moved in across the street and I already have plenty of stories. Now, I know what you're expecting, just another story about how the new neighbor is so loud. Or, he won't mow his lawn and it's lowering property values. And well, let's just say that I would slap my own grandmother across the face with a golf club to be complaining about something as simple as that right now, because my neighbor is, you guessed it, a Kevin. So let's begin. It all started just after he moved in. He had just pulled into his driveway and being the friendly guy that I am, I walked over to say hi. This was obviously unsatisfactory for Kevin, who already seemed to be pissed off by my mere presence, but I decided to do the stupid thing and introduce myself anyway. He was driving a very similar car to my own, so I asked him what year it was and he told me that it was a 2021 and I responded that I had a very similar car, it was just a year newer. He did not say anything, but I could tell that he was pissed, so I complimented the color of his and went about my business. The next morning at 7:30 am, I am awakened by a loud screeching noise, and when I look out the window, I'm surprised to see none other than Kevin roll up in a beat to a crappy Honda Civic, which genuinely looks like he found it at the junkyard. It is literally the rustiest thing that I've ever seen. The windows are mostly shattered out, it makes a loud squealing noise as it drives, and every 20 feet it backfires and shoots smoke out of the exhaust. Crap, that's all I can think as I crawl back into bed, and just as my head hits the pillow, Kevin starts screaming. "Looky, just what the F I found at the dealership's Greg." My name is Greg, he just won't call me that. "It's even got tires on it," which I'm sure that you're surprised to see that I can afford with your car being an entire effing model newer than my crap box. Just then I hear the squealing get louder for a second, and then there is a loud crash as his car slams through the fence which used to go around his yard. So you would think that he was drunk or something, right? Wrong. At this point I'm back at the window trying to figure out what the hell is happening, and I see Kevin get out of his car and walk all calm-like, in a perfectly straight line mind you, so he's not drunk, to his garage where he disappears for about 2 seconds before reappearing with a sledgehammer, with which he proceeds to beat the ever-living crap out of his shiny new crapmobile, the entire time screaming things at the top of his lungs like, "This frickin' piece of crap! Why the hell would it need a windshield? Oh yeah, that's right, it doesn't. Smash. Needs some damn body work, doesn't it? Wham. Why the F does this door have a handle on it? Oh yeah, boom, it doesn't." Yeah, what a lovely neighbor. And guess what, I already have about 10 more stories about him, and he has only been my neighbor for roughly a month. I hope that at least somebody can have a good laugh at what is currently my infuriating living situation. Update, it was the day before Christmas when all through the town where I heard the screams of Kevin, "Put your damn Christmas lights up right, effing now!" The neighbors all stared. Oh, what a shocking surprise, Christmas had come on the 25th of July. And while everyone watched in complete shock and awe, Kevin set up all 20 billion Christmas lights that he had gone out and bought. And now we have an update to the story and it reads like this. So as I mentioned in my last post, Kevin moved in about a month ago and I already have quite the list of stories to tell. I was gonna post something yesterday, but honestly, I really couldn't decide which story to tell. Worry not, Kevin decided to help me out in the most annoying way that he could possibly conjure up. If you guessed Christmas in July, then you would be exactly right. As I sat in front of the computer wondering whether I should tell the story of Kevin's amazing 4th of July show, or maybe the one about how he sank a giant telephone pole in the middle of his front yard for seemingly no reason, or possibly all of the latest and greatest modifications to his freshly sledgehammered crapbox car, there came a scream from outside. The scream had originated from none other than Kevin himself. You're asking, what was he screaming about? You guessed it, it was time for everyone in the neighborhood to put their Christmas lights up again. Right effing now! Now most of the time I know and I'm willing to admit when I make mistakes, and let me tell you, going across the street to ask Kevin why in the world would anyone put up Christmas lights up in July was definitely a mistake. Because why the hell would it being July mean that Kevin should not put Christmas lights up? That simply does not make sense, and at the end of the day, the real question is what kind of jackass would not put up Christmas lights in July? What makes the Christmas of July any different than the rest of the Christmases this year, right? Oh, and if it only ended there, but it didn't. Not only did Kevin put up an amazing amount of lights, but he also put many ornaments in his front yard. But so what, right? After all, it's Christmas, you should expect him to have both lights and ornaments, just not the kind that he had, and the normal person does not do to their ornaments what Kevin did to his. So of course there were a few standard ornaments in his lawn. For instance, he had a blow-up sleigh with all of Santa's reindeer pulling it and a few blow-up snowmen, but along with all of his normal ornaments he also set out about 40 mannequins wearing Christmas hats and elf shoes, which is, well, strange, right? Now notice that I said he had these ornaments. Yes, that was meant to be in the past tense because at 7:30 AM this morning, Kevin walked into his yard dressed like Santa, screaming his head off, wielding his beloved sledgehammer and a baseball hat, and he beat the ever-living crap out of each and every one of his ornaments. Then he ran them over several times with his lawnmower, the entire time screaming things like, "Eat poop, Santa!" and "I'm gonna bash your frickin' skull in, Rudolph!" Or "You piece of crap mannequin, you cannot hide from Kevin Firecrotch." By the way, Kevin Firecrotch is the nickname which for some reason he has come up with for himself. And this whole time he blasted the song "Here Comes Santa Claus" through a massive speaker which he had sitting on his front porch. It was truly fantastic, so in honor of Kevin, I wish you all a Merry Christmas. And yeah, Ripe Stars, I gotta say, I've had my fair share of crazy or at least kind of unusual neighbors in my life, but never a Kevin like this, that's for sure. I would say this Kevin probably deserves to be in a mental hospital or something. There's truly something not right with him. Anyway, let's continue to the title story, but before we do, please don't forget to subscribe to the channel if you haven't already, and maybe even like the video, because that would help me tremendously in regards to my standing with the YouTube algorithm. Thank you so much. It is hard for me to even type out this story, because despite it being over a year ago, it still hurts me to think about what happened. I went on a vacation and left with my house looking perfectly fine. I came back a week later to find a pile of rubble where my house once stood. I didn't have cameras or anything to see what happened, but even if I did, they would have been destroyed. After asking everybody I could get to open their doors, one mentioned remembering a name on one of the trucks from the demolition people. Also confirming that my house did get torn down and it was not some random act of God or something. Most of the people on the block were shocked to see me. They assumed I sold the house and moved away when they saw it get torn down. I contacted the company and kept getting jerked around with nobody wanting to talk to me, finally ending with a promise of being called back by a supervisor the next day. Since it was the afternoon at this point and apparently he had gone home, I had nowhere to stay. All I had was my suitcase of things I brought with me and random stuff in my car. And I was not too keen on the idea of having to sleep in my car, so I had a cousin that lived about 20 minutes away who agreed to let me sleep there after hearing what happened. I cannot explain how fortunate I was to not be stuck sleeping in my car or spending all my money on hotels. Anyway, the next day I did not get a call and once again was just being jerked around. I even called the town to ask who approved the permit to tear down my house. They had nothing on file for my house being torn down and were just as confused as I was. Then they recommended I file a police report, which I went and did. The push from the police was enough to finally get a call back from the supervisor, who said he was sorry about my house getting torn down and that he was hired by somebody that was claimed as the homeowner, giving me a name finally of the person responsible, which was my neighbor. The only one who suspiciously didn't answer her door when I was trying to get answers, so I added that to the police report and wanted to just go and talk to her. But I was advised not to do it and let the police handle it. I didn't have the ability to be calm with my entire house destroyed and everything in it gone. Sure, I had home insurance, but it wasn't gonna cover everything. Plus, calling them had me getting told that they didn't cover official home demolition. No matter how many times I said it was not official, I never got along with this neighbor, but I never thought she would have gone this far to plan my home being destroyed. Legal action was being taken against both her and the demolition company for destroying a house before making absolutely sure they should be doing this. Especially when there was no permit seemingly filed, I had a million questions and all of them were going to get answered in court. This was the first time I could really confront my neighbor. I don't want to go back and forth too much, so I will talk about the demo company first and then about her. They claimed what they did had a permit and presented it to the court, with the address being not mine, but in fact my neighbor's, with them claiming to have been let on that both homes were on the one property and my neighbor wanted the extra one removed. The supervisor said that the neighbor told him she had purchased the land, it didn't matter how good of a story they told. They had a responsibility to check something like that and they didn't do it. They were gonna face major charges, but overall, my neighbor was the one being pushed for liability of the home being destroyed, since she was the one who crafted the lies in order to get it done. Karen claimed that before I went on vacation, I had made a deal with her for the property and then I vanished before payment could be made, which is why there's no money changing hands. The neighbor then said, "Then the next day she was just gone and the house was boarded up. I went ahead with my plans for the land while trying to find ways to get into touch with her to transfer the money." She was a sweet talker and something minor may have been escapable with the things she said. This was too big for that, with an entire house and property being turned into dust. As for my home being boarded up, she was referring to the fact that when I left I had closed my window blinds and curtains. A far cry from the house being boarded up like it was abandoned, but then she started to change her story to how me leaving regardless of a deal, which meant that I had abandoned the land itself. As if she had the right instead of the city to come in and just claim it for herself. I seriously had no idea what her problem was since we didn't have any kind of beef with each other before all of this. I don't want to go into too much more detail with the trial as it's not as exciting as it might seem on TV and in the movies, as a 5-minute scene it might be, but we were in court for days trying to sort the entire thing out. My neighbor lost the lawsuit basically and was being forced to give me a huge payout. Basically the entire worth of what my house and property were before she intervened and tore it down. She even offered to handle all of the building and replacing items I had lost, in hopes that I was not gonna try and have any criminal charges placed against her. However, she was wrong about that because if this was not criminal destruction of property, then nothing else was. She did more than destroy it, she obliterated it, and between money I was getting from her, the demolition company and finally insurance, there were still things I could never get back and replace. I had some of my mom's and even grandmother's jewelry that was not able to be found in the rubble. Also countless photos and other things that had a ton of sentimental value, even things that could be replaced would not be the same as the ones that were lost. I had some books from my childhood and while sure I could get another copy, it would not be the one that I had the memories with. Maybe I'm too sentimental about these things, but I really don't care, it all turned into anger despite the settlement I got. Plus the fact that I was still on my cousin's couch and would be until an entirely new house was built, which is not something that happens quickly. From what I found out, my neighbor got in some serious trouble from the charges. I cannot recall specific details, but she ended up without her freedom for a while and also ended up putting her home up for sale. Meaning when I got to move into my brand new home, she was not next door to me anymore. What was also really sweet was the other people from the block who brought me things and threw me a little housewarming party. They felt terrible when they heard what happened and had no idea either way why she would have done something like that. I doubt I'll ever find the real reason why she had my house torn down, but at least she is gone now. And I get to enjoy her money making my home more state of the art than it ever was before. For anyone wondering, this happened in a very corrupt part of Southeast Asia. Law enforcement is rarely a thing here and people can be entitled as hell. It's actually ridiculous. Sometimes I hate my own country. And the next one is a story about a yard sale gone wrong. So I'm a big fan of yard sales and go to them every weekend. Recently I went to one and made a pile of stuff that I was planning to buy and came to agreement on price. I asked the seller if it was okay if I left the pile of stuff off to a separate corner so that I could shop around some more to add to the pile to buy. He said that was fine and suggested that he could bundle in more stuff with whatever else I find. In the yard sale world, you don't touch someone else's pile. While I was shopping, which was within 5 minutes of talking to the seller, someone else asked the seller about my stuff and the seller allowed the buyer to purchase my pile of stuff. I get back and ask the seller where the pile was and he says he already sold it to someone else. I reminded the seller that it was my pile and he had already agreed to let me buy the stuff after I shopped around some more. He shrugged, laughed and said it was not his problem. I put the other items I was planning to buy back and drove away back towards the road. At the end of his driveway, I tore down all of his yard sale signs. His driveway is very long and it's impossible to see the sale from the road, so he will have less/no buyers. And now let's move on to the next story. It starts like this. A couple of years ago, I ordered an express parcel delivery from the UK to the USA via one of these third-party parcel shipping companies. For those who are unfamiliar, they are a middleman and they hold huge accounts with UPS, DHL, FedEx, etc. They then offer cheaper parcel rates and pass some of this discount onto the customer. So I ordered an express 48-hour delivery with one of these delivery companies for my 2 parcels to the USA. This cost me around £100 for the 2 boxes, and from experience using this delivery company in the past, they have a delivery guarantee which offers me a full refund of all carriage charges if any part of the shipment is not delivered within 48 hours. A few days later, I was told by my customer that the boxes had arrived 2 days late. Not a problem, I checked the tracking number and it had held up at the UK-based air freight terminal, which entitled me to a full refund of the carriage charges. I then contacted the delivery company, but I was told that although I was fully entitled to a refund, I would have to speak to the third-party shipping company. I contacted them by phone and I was told that they don't issue refunds for delayed parcels. I explained that this was a guaranteed service and the delivery company said that I was entitled to a refund. At this point, I was passed on to a manager by the call center operative without even asking. The manager was very obnoxious and was not bothered that my parcel had been delayed. In his opinion, I should not expect it to get there on time when I had paid such a low price. So you want a full refund just because your parcel is delayed? Yes, I do, because that's what's in the terms and conditions. But you didn't buy the extra insurance. No, I didn't, because the delivery already included £1,000 of insurance anyway. Well, we don't do refunds for delayed parcels, and especially if you have not paid for the insurance. At this point, I was getting pretty annoyed because he was making up this idea of buying insurance to cover for delays. The insurance only covered total loss and damage anyway. So I explained that if I did not receive a refund, I would simply initiate a chargeback on my credit card for the payment. At this point, he raised his voice and told me, "Fine, try to do a chargeback then. We will find it and you won't get a refund. Yeah, your parcel was late, but that doesn't mean you get a free delivery." I ended the call and got straight on the phone to my credit card company. They went through a rigorous process with me and asked for a copy of the original invoice, the terms and conditions, etc. Within 24 hours, they had refunded the full amount back to my card and sent me a letter giving me the reasons they found the chargeback in my favor. It also explained that the merchant, the shipping company, had 30 days to contest the chargeback. However, 30 days came and went and the money was still showing as refunded. 6 weeks later, I received an email from their customer service team telling me that they were willing to give me a partial refund of 10% to compensate me for the delay. Obviously, somebody had not realized that I had initiated a chargeback and now it was too late. So I replied and politely explained that I was told by the manager, stating his name, to initiate a chargeback because their company does not issue refunds even when their terms and conditions say so. Therefore, as far as I was concerned, the matter was now closed as my credit card company had given them 30 days to reply to the chargeback and they had not replied. Therefore, the chargeback was granted. Not only did I never hear anything back from them, but I have not used this company since. The next one is titled, "Don't Mess With Me." In college, I had a randomly assigned roommate that I didn't get along with at all. Our personalities were just on 2 opposite ends of the personality spectrum and we clashed. The only things we had in common were that we went to the same college and lived in the same apartment. That's it. Anyways, it was a nightmare living situation. The apartment had 4 rooms and 2 bathrooms. She and I shared the same bathroom as our rooms were next to each other. We had 2 roommates on the other half of the apartment that we both got along with. After over 8 months of just pure passive aggressiveness towards each other, like I would put sticky notes on her days-old dirty dishes and she would put my wet laundry on the floor, she decided to report me to the apartment management for bullying her. Honestly, we were doing it to each other. However, the apartment management took pity on her because I was tall and athletic and she was 6 inches shorter than me and very thin. She claimed I physically intimidated her and she was scared to live with me. She did this because she wanted to move to a new apartment without paying a $500 fee, but instead the apartment issued a written warning. The warning stated that we were not to touch any of each other's personal belongings without written permission. The first infraction was a $250 fine. Second infraction was a $500 fine, and a third infraction would result in eviction. I was so scared walking out of the office because I couldn't afford those fines, and she had the biggest smile on her face. I knew that she would immediately report me. I went back to the apartment and she left for work. I was mortified. Then I realized she made a huge mistake. Everything communal in the apartment belonged to me and she was a super moocher. I told my other roommates what had happened and they were shocked. I asked if I could use their bathroom temporarily and they said, of course. So I immediately emptied out everything that was mine in our shared bathroom: shower curtain, toilet paper, rug, towels and soap. I grabbed my magnetic whiteboard and listed out everything in the kitchen that belonged to me, aka plates, cups, mugs, pots, pans, silverware, coffee maker, toaster, pot holder, towels, literally listed every single item. And said that she is not allowed to use any of it without my written, no texts, permission. I also drew some eyes to remind her that everyone was watching. I popped that whiteboard on the fridge and went in my room to do some homework. Later she came home from work and had a meltdown. She screamed. Not any words, just a blood-curdling scream. In the following couple of days, her father came to the apartment to threaten me that they were getting a lawyer. She bought her first roll of toilet paper and a plastic shower curtain, but it was too much for her to handle. She went back to the main office to report my bullying once again and was instead told that she could either deal with it or pay $500 to move to a new apartment. She moved out 7 days after the warning was issued. And the next one is titled Seat Issues. So last summer I went on vacation in Greece for a whole month. It was so great to see all my friends again after a year. I am half Greek, half Dutch and have been living in the Netherlands for 5 years. To fly back home takes a whole day because connective flights and such. We booked a whole row of seats and an aisle seat for me. Cue in the Greeks who asked me to move one row back and at the opposite side so the wife could sit next to the husband. As they were flying to a foreign country, I was nice and gave up my seat and went to the aisle seat the wife was sitting at. After a while, the couple said, "Oh, you have a middle seat." I was confused because the wife was sitting at the aisle. And I said that was not the agreement and I want my seat back. The couple said, "Oh well, now we have switched, nothing you can do." While they grinned and laughed thinking that they played me. I was pissed because they were a-holes, but I noticed that the attendants were shutting the plane door, so I just smiled and told my family to calm down and that it will be alright. So after we took off, it's a 3-hour flight so it's not that short, I was still in an empty row. I had all the space to myself and was comfortably lying over 3 seats that I had to myself. The couple noticed and made a sour face. They asked if I could move to my original seat. That's when I said, "Oh well, now we have switched, nothing you can do." It was amazing to see my whole family and the surrounding seats trying to cover their laughs. Even the flight attendants were grinning. It's not a very exciting story, but I found it Reddit worthy. And yeah, Ripe Stars, if you've ever gotten any sort of petty revenge on people in planes, then please let us know in the comments because I would love to hear your petty revenge story. And yeah guys, if you cannot get enough of my content, please don't forget to check out my podcast by searching for Ripe Stories on all major podcast platforms such as Spotify, Apple or Google Podcasts. Furthermore, you can find bonus content by going to patreon.com/ripeyoutube or by clicking the join button here on YouTube. For a small monthly fee, you will get access to dozens and dozens of exclusive videos you won't find anywhere else. Thank you so much for watching and I hope to see you again tomorrow.